Hi, this is Adam at The Noise Chap, and this is just a little video on what hearing sounds like when it's been damaged by noise. Just before diving into that, a very quick few seconds overview on what a hearing test result looks like, an audiogram, because I use this throughout the demonstration. So this graph is what you get for a hearing test. You've got two charts on it, one for the left ear and one for the right. The left-hand side of each graph is the deeper low frequencies, and then the right-hand side of each graph is the high-pitch noises. And the lower down you go from top to bottom, the bigger the degree of hearing loss. Okay, so the more decibels are needed for somebody to hear it. With noise particularly damages the top end. Now by that we're talking about this area around 4 to 6 kilohertz. So it's the area that's circled here. That's the area that starts to be damaged by noise. So this is what the hearing test graph looks like, and I'll refer back to these all the way through, but just so you know what they mean. What you're going to get in each of these pieces of music is a filter applied that matches the same pattern you can see in the audiometry graph. What that is doing is mimicking developing hearing loss. Now I've chosen this piece of music because it has a section at the beginning which is mostly just vocals, and then about 20 seconds later the band kick in where you've got vocals and music, and that's very good as a simile for example, going into a busy pub or busy restaurant. So at the beginning you're listening to speech when there's no background noise, and then after about 20 seconds it's the same as listening to speech when there is background noise around, a lot of people talking, music in the background, that kind of thing. And as you'll see, as hearing loss develops, the background noise just starts to bury speech. So that's particularly what we're looking at here. Just a quick nod to a band called Merry Hell. This is one of their songs called Drunken Serenade. Great band. Go get the album.
And so I speak my truth aloud, I sing it clear and I sing it proud, 'cause in my darkest hours of doubt these songs have carried me. And just as sure as I am born, I'll sing my heart out in the storm with a drunken serenade, drunken serenade, drunken serenade in the rain.
So as you've got there, the vocals, very easy to follow. The music doesn't detract for them at all. And if you're in a social situation, that means you can pick out what somebody is saying over background noise, no problem at all. So the next one, as you can see on the graph, we've got a little bit of noise damage starting to come in at the very top end there, that little drop, a little V-shaped trough in the result. For 99% of people, if you listen carefully, and particularly if you're listening on headphones, you may notice it's not quite as crisp as it was before. So it's lost a little bit of sharpness and a little bit of the definition. But other than that, you can still follow it quite happily.
And so I speak my truth aloud, I sing it clear and I sing it proud, 'cause in my darkest hours of doubt these songs have carried me. And just as sure as I am born, I'll sing my heart out in the storm with a drunken serenade, drunken serenade, drunken serenade in the
So that's when you've got a little bit of noise damage starting to drop in at the top, and you can see it's just made things a little bit less crisp than they used to be. However, say you carry on working with a lot of noise or carry on listening to a lot of music on headphones, things like that, and generally starting to build up a little bit of noise damage over time. As the hearing deteriorates, it pulls in a wider range of frequencies, and also those key sharp frequencies continue to get worse. So you've got a bit of a double effect going on there. You're losing even more at those sharp frequencies and pulling in more behind it. And at this point, everything is starting to get quite muffled. And also I would flag the difference between the speech and between the music when the band kick in. That's starting to really get minimized. It's very close to becoming one sound. You can still pick out the speech quite clearly, but you do need to concentrate just a little bit more than you used to. And this is the kind of situation where somebody's sitting in a pub or a restaurant and they're starting to watch people speak. They're starting to lip read a little bit, also using context of what's being talked about to kind of fill in the gaps on what they're not hearing. But this is the same piece of music with the filters just applied to mimic that slightly increasing level of hearing loss.
And so I speak my truth aloud, I sing it clear and I sing it proud, 'cause in my darkest hours of doubt, these songs have carried me. And just as sure as I am born, I'll sing my heart out in the storm with a drunken serenade, drunken serenade, drunken serenade in the rain.
So as that one demonstrates, the issue is not really that you go deaf, that you can't hear sounds at all. What you start to lose with noise and hearing that's been damaged by excess noise is clarity and sharpness. You lose the ability to start to be able to pull out different sounds, and particularly speech just becomes buried in background noise. A common way people who've got it describe it is if they're sitting in a pub, they can hear what's going on the other side of the room, but they can't hear what somebody's saying who's sat right next to them. Now, that actually is still a reasonably mid-level of hearing loss. So if you carry on using headphones, you carry on getting a lot of workplace exposure without hearing protection, a lot of nightclubs, for example, concerts, your hearing carries on getting worse. And this is a fairly heavy degree of noise damage in hearing. I think, as you can hear with this one, if you concentrate, you can hear the speech. So that first bit of the music where there's not much background noise, you can still follow it, especially if you turn the volume up, because obviously this has got much quieter now as well. So typically people with this type of hearing, they turn in the TV up because they can't hear what people are saying on TV. But once the band kick in, that really emphasizes that even if you've turned the volume up to hear what's being said when things are quiet, as soon as there's background noise around, it's just a mush of noise. The vocals get completely buried in the music. And that really is somebody who's sitting in a pub, they're sitting in a restaurant, they haven't got a clue what's going on. People are saying, are you deaf? Are you not listening to me? And it's not that they aren't listening. They just can't pick out speech at all. They can just hear a morass of noise around them. This can also impact people sitting in things like open plan offices. They can hear all that chatter going on, people clacking away on keyboards. They can hear telephone conversations going on, but they can't actually pull out what anyone is saying with any degree of clarity. So this is somebody with a fairly heavy degree of noise-induced hearing loss. So hopefully as that demonstrates, the issue is not necessarily that you can't hear, it's that you lose that clarity. If you make things louder, you turn the volume up on that last one, all you get is a louder mess. You don't get clarity back. If you're watching TV, there's been such a trend in recent decades to add more and more and more sound effects and background music to dramas, that what happens if you've got a bit of hearing loss is all you can hear is that background noise. The speech just gets completely buried within it. If you're sitting somewhere and a person is talking to you and they're facing away from you, very often you miss it completely. It's not that you don't understand what's being said. Often you don't even recognise that they said something in the first place because the speech has just got buried into background noise. So you're sitting in a car driving somewhere with family. They're facing away from you, they start talking, you just don't hear it. Because of the wind noise, the tyre noise, maybe the stereo's on as well. You can hear all that going on and the speech is just buried into that whole block of noise. And that's what's particularly insidious about noise and noise damage to hearing. It takes away speech. You can still hear what's going on. You can make everything louder. You can turn the volume up on the TV, but it won't help. It won't make things better. It's just going to make it sound as dirty and horrible a noise, just louder. So that's why we focus so much on noise. There is no cure for it. What's actually happened within your ears is the part of your ears that are particularly sensitive to speech have been killed. So it's a one-way process. They don't heal, they don't recover. The only solution is hearing aids that are just amplifying certain parts of the audio spectrum for you. But obviously, avoid it in the first place. So this is why we focus so much on noise. It's a one-way process and the damage from it is irreversible. And hopefully those bits of music help to just demonstrate what it is we're talking about with this.